Hey guys, welcome to Ongoing Changes. My name is Dr. Beatriz Martini, and with me I have my wonderful friend Sarah Curley. We met, she moved in just down the street and we just met. It was, as she said, serendipitous. And we started talking and we went down one rabbit hole, then the other rabbit hole, and then the other rabbit hole.
And now you struggle to walk away.
And every time we meet, it's exactly the same thing. So with that in mind, please welcome Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure. And it, like you said, like we were talking about, it was the kind of people that I've attracted to my store has just been amazing. The kind of conversations that we get to have in there. And I have to say, you're one of my favorites. I really do love it when you walk down.
You've got this amazing space that you've created and the energy that it just says, come talk to me.
I hope so. I'm trying to kind of put that out there.
Absolutely. That's what I'm going to tell. There is just so much love that comes out of it. So.
Yeah, and my girls love being in there talking as well, and they've got their own little stool sitting up now so they can actually be part of the conversation. So you wait, they're not in their little cubby anymore. They're going to be up talking.
Absolutely incredible. So as you know, today we wanted to discuss belief systems.
Yes.
And how they actually come about. And, what do you think of belief systems? How did they come about? When did you become aware of them?
I think that's a fascinating question in general. Just the piece that I think most people, when you say belief system, it's so kind of broad. And I think there's two different ideas behind belief system. One, faith. And that's not necessarily what we're talking about today, but it does need to kind of be mentioned. Faith is you needing to work on that faith, right? You're needing to do a lot to maintain that. And yeah, that's right. Whereas when we're talking today about beliefs or belief systems, we're almost talking about programs, right? Things that are kind of running around in us that we may be aware of or we may not be aware of. So I think it's like good to differentiate those two, put them in like two different categories.
And you've done it very much. Thank you very much. I love what you do my triggers. My job is wonderful. So that's right. And people have different ideas of what a belief is. Quite right.
Yeah.
You brought in the spiritual side of it because they'll say believe, whether it's God or whoever else.
Yeah.
But what do you see of the other side of beliefs? The things that we believe to be true. Do we abide by what we believe to be true? Is it our thoughts or is it someone else's thoughts?
And I think that's the part of it that's so fascinating. And I think in some of your questions that you sent to me, we start talking about, different people's thoughts on this topic, but also even the things that shape our beliefs, like the critical years, those first 7 years and things like that. And I think this concept of those first 7 years, perhaps that's a good point to go into, when it's almost as if our period of time that we're learning that in is like an absorption period. You know how they talk about kids being sponges, but it's almost an adaptation so that we can learn more quickly. And sometimes that has meant learning things that might not be so good for us. And I kind of think all of these impressions, society, all of the social structures that we have around us. I mean, I've written tons of articles on that concept of like invisible social structures around us, particularly women. But then what we instill in our little girls and why little girls might be better cleaners, for example, than boys. And it's that they are literally watching and being programmed because they're watching the older woman do those very tasks and they're putting them in themselves on a subconscious note. But do we get to choose those?
But is today's society making it easier for women to have both of those roles, being not only the mother, but also being able to work so that they see that mum doesn't just do the cooking because dad will come and give a hand and help and put them to bed and, have the balance between the roles.
Yes, definitely. I thought it was adorable, my youngest, and now my husband, he helps so much and helps. See, even that term is in our language. It's so prolific throughout the way that we even speak in our society in Australia. It's quite a heavy construct around us. But Genevieve asked me, she said, well, what, girls work? And I thought, what am I doing out in the shop? What do you think I'm doing? Is that not work to you?
Obviously, they have
And
too much fun and they
they think it's fun, yeah. But it's all these different pieces that we're just not so aware of, right? Like that, the program. But what is the program? What is that deeper construct around us? The invisible chains we were talking about a moment ago before we started. But
Yeah. And what's interesting, you said help.
Mm.
And it's not about your husband helps, it's about its partnership.
Yeah.
And you both, it's not so much about helping, but it's about collaboration, about working together to achieve something, whether it's putting a meal together or putting the girls to bed or giving them a bath or reading them a story.
Yeah.
But our language is so black and white.
Yes. Yes, that's so true.
Right? And so are our beliefs serving us or are they hindering us? So if we're in fetus stage, first 7 years of our life, la la, life is wonderful. What are you going to show me today?
Yes.
But they also reckon that it's the last trimester that the kids absorb like sponges already.
Yes.
And you know, what was it like for you in your last trimester?
I think a lot more emotionally up and down, but it depends on boys and girls too, because that was a big piece. With the girls, I noticed myself just so much more emotional, and there was all these ups and downs throughout it. And I think we had my mother-in-law living with us at the end of Audrey's pregnancy, so that was in itself, it was a lot of things that we had to kind of navigate through. And then anxiety rises, and she's quite an anxious little individual. And we know the nervous system is developed at that stage of life too. So, yeah, definitely.
So we're much more aware now. And then when the kids come out, you think, the house is peaceful. It's all very quiet. Why are you so anxious?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and it's what we instilled in them earlier on.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you think the belief system has served you to now?
I think to build on that, I'd have to kind of go through the different stepping stones. And I kind of think about a question that you put through our briefing beforehand. And one point, I just love the way that you asked the question, if you don't mind me going to the notes. There was just one particular one, and it was to do with changing the belief system. So please pull me up if you're planning to go there for more in depth. But are belief systems a form of personal power or a form of slavery? I loved the way that you positioned that question. And I think when I'm thinking about my own journey and what I went through, there's all these different things that we did in ancient traditions, and yourself as a master of TCM, right, a doctor, you know full well how much we're missing in society today. But I needed to go through all of this scaffolding to kind of, I felt like I wasn't given the same level ground that everybody else was, and I was almost climbing out of a bit of a ditch to kind of get back to the point that most would have been kind of set on. And with that means a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of understanding what makes me different and what my perhaps experiences have caused me to have these sort of more invisible ropes or more invisible chains than, say, the average person would. So I had that acknowledgement needs to be there. You can't kind of leave that to the side. No, I'm fine. That for me was sort of recognition of that was the major part that helped me kind of come out of that. Yeah.
It's interesting because you said that you had more challenges than your peers. it's always very hard to see the grass is greener on
That's
the other
true.
side.
Yes,
Because
very true.
what we perceive is
Mm.
not necessarily what's happening with them.
That's very true. Yeah.
So it makes it difficult. But you obviously had a belief that you were here, yours was somewhere else.
That was therapy. That got me there. Beforehand, I thought we were all on kind of the same level, and then not understanding why I was sort of not in the same, not necessarily not in the same position as some of my peers, like them going through uni earlier than I did, for example, or knowing what they wanted to do with their life, like knowing, having that inner trust, that confidence. Where did you get that from? Like that kind of feeling. Little things like that. And then later, I think it was pointed out to me from somebody else that was helping me analyze my own situation, that I realized, okay, well, it wasn't necessarily level ground then. Okay, that's why there was a bit of a difference between where I am and where others might be at that particular point in time. I don't think that that's the case now at all. I think when you understand the brain and you understand the subconscious, and you're able to, one, you can kind of feel through things rather than intellectualize them. You move a lot faster through stuff that's holding you back. And I think everybody has their own things that pull them back at different points in their life too. And I feel like I've jumped over so many more hurdles. But at the time, when I was much younger, I kind of looked at all my peers doing what they should have been doing. And I wasn't. And going, I don't know what's going on. And now they would probably say the other way around, like, I should be in your shoes, or I did all of the things that we were supposed to do. But it's not about a comparison piece. It's more about that recognition of self and recognition of what's going on, perhaps underneath maybe the conscious layer. Yeah.
So where did your belief system come from that gave you that feeling that you weren't supported, or you couldn't, move through like all your other friends?
I think a story that I told you beforehand, I'm a little bit nervous to put that on here now, but just moments where I did try and reach out to accomplish certain goals that I wanted to, and reaching a lot higher than I was expected to. And I was capable of it. I know that I was, because of like how well I did in school and stuff. But there's a lot more to it than just academic knowledge as well.
Of course.
Because you can very much jump down that rabbit hole and then be burnt out by the end. And I have a lot of friends that are now absolutely obliterated and burnt out. And I think for me, it was really good that things happened the way that they did, because otherwise I too would be burnt out and not able to do the things that light me up the way that I do now, which has been an amazing privilege when looking back on the entire situation. But we can't necessarily measure things from a snippet in time. But yeah, I think recognizing belief systems do have such intense power over us. And then where they come from, I think it depends on where you're at. It depends on whom has the biggest influence over you at that point in time too. Yeah.
And also, I mean, your belief system doesn't have to be detrimental.
Yeah.
Because in many times it'll keep you safe. As a child,
That's right.
Don't touch anything hot because you'll get burned.
Of course.
Look both ways before crossing the road. I mean, all those beliefs are very logical.
Yeah.
And they become like second nature to us, because many times we get in the car and do you remember getting from here to there?
Yeah.
And you think, that is a bit scary.
Yeah.
But it's our subconscious that just takes over. But also by the same token, like they say, when you see pictures of yourself when you were a child, when you walk into your parents' house, it's almost like you get thrown back to being a child.
Yeah.
And therefore the interaction becomes, of who you were as a child, which was those belief systems.
Yes.
And so do they work for you now? When do you recognize that it's a belief as opposed to something that's working from
An identity.
inside of you?
Yeah, that's such a good point. And identifying with something versus noticing. And that's what we do in meditation, isn't it? So we kind of like notice that thought that just came out, that we don't necessarily need to identify with that specifically. Yeah, the letting it move as it needs to and letting it release as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great. Because you were saying about thinking, and when we think, we're in our heads and we just keep going around, and it's like being a rat on one of those wheels that's just trying to keep up, and the thoughts just keep getting, more and more, and they just become overwhelming. And like you said, your friends, they're burnt out. They're too much in their head.
Yep.
But when you said feeling it into the body, sensing where it is in your throat that you can't speak. Is it in your heart that, that lack of joy, or is it in your stomach that's, that gives you the tight spring that is not very pleasant? So getting out of our heads is a really good thing to do.
And it's also a position of survival mode, isn't it? When we're up in our heads, we're able to think, we're able to move, we're able to analyze and be hyper vigilant to all of the different things happening around us. And even as a society, we're pushed to, I hate to use the word patriarchy, but that's how men think oftentimes. And when we've got a society that is sort of looking up to that, to thinking, to academics, to all these out of body into mind situations, then that's going to be a system or a belief system that's kind of pulling us into our mind and out of our body. Most people, like the millennials, for example, a lot of them don't even know what a feeling is. It's been like such a massive conversation online over the last 5 years where people don't realize that feelings are sensations within the body. Like that's such a major piece that we're not even necessarily taught quite that emphatically.
Yeah. Generationally, like I remember working with a girl, excuse me, and she kept saying, I'm very aware of my body. I've got sensations and feelings.
That's an intellectualizer, I can already tell.
Such an intellectual. Not a gold, but it was all cerebral. And so she said, I'm feeling all these things and I must be running a temperature. She was just having a panic attack.
Yeah.
But she didn't realize it.
That happened to a friend of mine. She got picked up by an ambulance and she thought she was having a heart attack. And it was a panic attack at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Was she a thinker as well?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you start to overanalyze and see what's happening with the body instead of just saying,
drop into the body.
Breath, drop in. And I mean, doing belly breath, taking your consciousness to your belly, just makes you get out of your head.
Yes.
And it just anchors you.
Well, most weren't taught those simple little things that we now see even kids doing, or mine do. Anyways, take a breath, Audrey will. And she will just naturally do that. And you kind of see her calm herself down, which is really cool to see and watch and give the space to emotion that some of us may never have really received. I know I didn't really receive that all too well, and that's tough because you don't know how to then if you haven't practiced it as a young person. I always say to my kids, like, this is the place that you're supposed to feel that. We're here for you to practice. Your family's here for you to practice those things with. And I think with the little boys too, like my son, they aren't necessarily, it's still very much a strong culture, boys harden up and that kind of, that sort of is instilled in them very young, or teased for crying or getting emotional. So they have to kind of like shut down all their emotions. And when they can finally feel into those things, it feels overwhelming. It does take over. It's a wave over your entire body, which is why we have what we call triggers, right? And in trauma work. And the triggers, you're literally in a flashback. You're in a moment of time in the past where your body hasn't been able to finish the loop. It hasn't, it's trying to. And I think in one of your questions as well, you were talking about guilt and fear, particularly, like they're very strong.
Yes. Well, we're taught guilt and fear.
Yeah. And shame.
Because shame, that's one of the biggest ones. You should have done better. Why?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do this? And the thing is that it's just nonsensical, but it gets locked in the body.
It does. Yeah.
And so being aware of it, you can actually let it go.
Yeah. I love, in our household, we have a saying whenever somebody says, you should have, stop shooting on me.
Yeah, shooting.
Nice. And then it's very quickly closed off. Everybody laughs and then we can move on from it. But it's like that should statement is such, you don't realize how big of a weight that holds. Yeah. And I think on our little boys, that is a really big one. You should have behaved. You should have. You should have
looked after your sister. You're the older one. You should be responsible.
Yeah.
Why? You're the parent. You should
actually. Yeah.
And so how critical those 7 years are that we get programmed basically is so when we go to school and we step into society, we can become part of it without having to be told too much because you've already got the ground rules, you know, the shoulds, the should nots.
Yeah.
You know, if I say the wrong word, it'll be about shame, about guilt, or how could I? That's a terrible thing to do. And so therefore we get shot down and we get put in our place. And therefore, each time it seems to be like another weight is being put on our shoulders. And if you see people sometimes walking, they're all hunched.
Notice it. Yeah.
They don't want to breathe because, you know, someone might notice them.
Yeah. Invisible.
Yeah.
Wanting to be invisible.
Exactly. And back in the days when you see little kids, they breathe from the stomach. It's that, I'm here. What's wrong? Yeah, it's fine, isn't it? It's great. And then it's like, no, don't do that. That's not how, you know, our friends expect you to behave. You're going to go to their place. You don't touch anything. You don't say anything. There's so many rules you're supposed to remember.
Yep.
And then they wonder why kids become bashful or they become angry. And it's almost like, it's like that phantom limb, you know, where things are open and you lose a limb and then they say that, oh, the synapse is still open. So therefore the brain can still remember it and feel it and everything else.
And it gets itchy.
And so it's like that trapdoor between the conscious and the unconscious where our belief systems seem to be stuck there.
Yep.
And so it's being able to differentiate because what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes along the way, you lose friends and family.
Yeah, it's true. And I just, as you were sort of doing this in sign language, the sign because of the part of the brain that lifts when they're in a trauma response is this.
Interesting.
And when you see, you can see it in kids. Like you try and rationalize with them when they're in an emotional episode. You can't. There's no way of talking to them. It doesn't matter how much logic you feed them. There's nothing going through them until they're regulated again. And you have to just sit with that wave of emotion because otherwise it's caught in that little person's body. I mean, when I was doing remedial therapy, I cannot tell you how many people would burst into tears on my table because there's all of these different tissues that have all of those emotional responses caught up in them. And that's somatic therapy as well, right? So we're like learning to move those emotions through, and people will just have a massive emotional release. But it's actually the emotional cascade didn't get to finish. The neuropeptides don't get to move all the way through, they aren't able to metabolize. And so they get stored in the tissues. And then you're holding on to them for a really long time until you can actually express that or magnetize that situation to you again until you can express it, right? Yeah. And
as you said, the neurological connection is still there.
Yeah.
Doing the physical work, you were releasing them. Did they realize where it was coming from, or?
Yeah, so I used to work with athletes, and athletes are very strong and don't tend to have a lot of emotions, and I'm not sure if yeah, I suppose so. I can't say what team, but I did work with Olympians at one point as well, and one particular person, oh gosh, I hope they don't see this, but broke down, and they knew exactly what it was. The memory came immediately with the particular spot that we were treating, and I probably won't even mention where it was necessarily either, because
yeah, just about what happened.
But the
trigger,
Olympian, and these are stern people that are able to kind of like rock hard capable of doing, and the self-control that these people have is incredible, and the training that they do, and this person couldn't stop blubbering in that moment in time. I'm so thankful that I was able to be a safe place in that point in time, because a lot of the time you kind of get this awkward space. Somebody doesn't know what to do, but when you know what's happening, you can kind of go, let it happen. Let the wave come in and let it go out again. Let it come in and let it move through, because otherwise it's going to come back later. Let's not let this tension that we've just gotten out stay. Let's let it release. And when people are talked through that, they can kind of attach this invisible thing with a physical thing, and then they move through it so much quicker, because when you fight it, it's bigger and it exaggerates, the same as a child. When you tell them not to have a tantrum, is that going to stop the tantrum? Never. Unless you threaten, some parents will do that and that'll stop them for a minute, but then they have to deal with that when they're adults, So it's letting that come all the way through and cycle through. And I can't tell you how many people I see today still do not know how to let that cycle through, and they shame themselves. They get to, just over halfway through the loop, and they shut themselves down, particularly women. They will shut themselves down and they say, I have a good life. I shouldn't be feeling this way. And that shutdown is like that grief that just kind of has that heaviness over us, and we don't want to feel it anymore. It's too much. The other end of it feels so relieving when you get through it all the way.
Yes, what are they scared of? That if they change their belief, or they let go of this anchor that something is going to change their life? What is it?
Most that I've seen, and I'm sure I'd love to hear what you've seen too, actually, because you've, many years my senior.
The needles are magic.
I know. Most, when I talk them through what's stopping you, why have you stopped here, it's the program that runs. It gets to the point where someone has said to them at that point in time, stop feeling that. Stop doing that. And they can't quite get past that. It's almost like the little dip over the top. And once you get over it, it's like easy running. But once they hit that stop, it was so intense in that period of time of their life that moving through it is just so hard. It doesn't seem like there's an out. Like you're kind of like ready to give up. It's so heavy. It's so much on the body in that point in time. And that's what survival mode is it not? I mean, I've got to shut down. I've got to pull away. I'm going to die. I'm going to die if I don't stop this thing from happening. And that's where they then go back. And then they've got to try and meet that whole thing again. But once you practice on smaller loops, you find that the next is easier and easier and easier. They might not necessarily stop, but
it's interesting because it makes you wonder, is that a belief system that they have to be X, Y, and Z, otherwise they won't be loved? Or if they change, does it mean that they can no longer go back home and the family won't recognize them.
Yeah. An invisible chain to the structures once again.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, what we've been programmed to believe.
Yeah.
And if they changed, will the whole world change?
Mm.
I mean, some people are so stuck in playing the game.
Yep.
That they get sick.
Mm. So true.
But they don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
They say, oh, it was part of my genes, it was hereditary, my dad, my mom, my auntie, my uncle. So therefore, you know, I was bound to get it. And you think, no, you're not.
Mm. That's right.
It's what's happening in here that's causing it.
Yeah.
So how do we get people to recognize and realize that they're working from a belief system that could be absolutely obsolete?
I think we're already doing it in a sense of this entire generation of children are being exposed to. And not only that, but you walk into a room with a screaming child and you watch all the adults get triggered. Not that kid. That kid's fine expressing.
Yeah.
They do not mind whatsoever. But every one of those adults in the room will freak out with overwhelm and they'll want to shut the kid up. For why? Do they have a problem with the crying? Most of the time, no. But they are now faced with the time they were told, stop crying, stop feeling. You cannot express what it is that you're going through.
So they get thrown back to when they were in that situation.
Yeah. And they don't realize it.
No.
But when we're seeing all of these kids allowed to express, you see all the shooters that come in. And we slowly introduce the idea of these loops that they need to move through so they don't have to deal with it as adults. And oftentimes, a lot of people are really receptive to that.
Yeah.
They will go, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that was something that I was holding in myself. Oh, I didn't know that I had that judgment of somebody else until you kind of pointed it out to me. It was invisible to me until then. And then once you do, that's what I've noticed anyways, is once you have kind of pointed that out, they're able to, oh. And then the more that you can see it, right, you can't stop it. The next time, the should will still come. But then the next time it comes up, you're like, oh, I did that thing again. And then again. And eventually that leads to the change. And in a bigger societal sense, I think there are a lot of things that are changing. The narrative is changing. The expectations are changing. The stay-at-home dads that are around now, that's a massive shift. Yeah.
I mean, a friend of mine, when he had kids, he stayed home.
Yep.
Right? So his kids would now be late 30s.
Wow.
Well, he was ostracized.
Would be unheard of back then.
Absolutely unheard of. So he was ostracized and he couldn't get a job. So he started his own services. But the thing was that back then there was a real threat. And if our society is getting so good, why are there so many people that are either anxious, stressed, have insomnia?
Insomnia most of the time is grief too, by the way, I've noted. Yeah.
You know, heart, lack of joy.
Yep. They're not quite recognizing it on their own level. You know how when you project something, you're more capable of understanding it? Whereas when you're looking at yourself, it's so hard to see that mirrored image.
But a lot of people project because they don't understand and they get annoyed at the person they're projecting onto.
Without realizing it.
Exactly. Because it's something that they do. You don't like it, but it's like.
Yeah. And I loved that. I can't remember what book it was that I was reading, but that was the other thing that helped me with my belief systems was reading a lot of books, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. And Audible makes that really easy now. Like, it's so good. But when somebody has like this thing in their head and they can't see it, and then you're able to go, you know, the reason you're so angry about that is because it's something in you. And when that clicks, and then they start, and you can see it in somebody's face. I've seen it in a few that have been. I almost went, I don't know if I'd ever see a change in you. And then pointing that very thing out, being able to go, oh, You did notice it, didn't you? Oh, wow. But silent most of the time, not an acknowledgement of it actually being a change. But
I remember when I was younger, I was horrified becoming my mother.
wow. Really?
I mean, I love my mother. Some of her traits were left a little bit to desire, and it was like I didn't want to do that. But there's a lot of people there who don't want to be like their father or like their mother, you know. They're absolutely horrified that they're going to turn out like that. And then their friends start seeing things. And some say something and some don't say anything. And it's like, you do realize you're becoming like...
Oh, and the anger that comes up when you point it out, no?
The denials.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
Or my kids say to me, I caught myself saying something. Oh my God, I'm sounding like my mother now.
Yeah.
It's like, but is it bad? Is it okay, depending on what traits they have or beliefs that align with you?
Of course,
and that serve you as being part of life?
Yeah.
But if they don't serve you, it's like, hey, you shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah.
But it's that realization that we don't want to turn into them.
And why not? Sometimes there's those moments of judgment as a person, like this is like the perfect example, is the non-parents on parents.
Oh,
right? I'm not going to be like that when I'm a parent. Okay. I hope you can live up to that. Okay, let's see. We'll see. And I remember, because I was the eldest there's 9. I know. 10, including myself, actually. But yeah, it is 9 siblings that I was the eldest of. So I was looking after all these little...
Before you were a mother.
And so I knew everything. You have no idea. I knew it all. I knew exactly what they were doing wrong until I didn't know what they were doing wrong at all. And it's a big shift as soon as you get into that position. And I think that's where compassion and understanding is like such a core piece. Like, yes, you've got to feel through all of the different things that happened and why you didn't like that about mum, dad, auntie, uncle, whomever, and why that structure may not have been fitting to you personally. But then I also like to kind of think about it and go, but if women, for example, pulling this out to society, did not put their hand up and work as hard as they did to get into the workforce and work like men and say, we can do it all.
We had to do more than what
That's
we
right.
did.
Yeah. If they didn't, if they weren't that hard-hitting, harsh, must work my tail off and be too exhausted to do anything else, what changes would we have right now? Not much. They had to be her.
Why? Why does it have to be this continuous struggle? Why does it have to be power versus force? Right? If you do it from a place of power and love, you don't have to be like, someone with really strong and just pushing to get their point across. If we want a balanced society, we have to have the belief that a female doesn't have to be like a male, and a male
100%.
doesn't have to be like a female. That's the beauty of the balance.
Exactly.
You can bring both into the same thing.
Not many people can see it though. And it's the same as when you've got like a plain wall and a wedge. To make the hole in the first place, to open up the space, that point needs to be very sharp and sometimes harsh and sometimes really hard for maybe the people below is a terrible term, but, those who need to submit to that particular pointed person at that particular time who's making the change. It is hard because others can't see it until they can. And it's only once this conversation is so normal among everybody in the coffee shop that that's going to happen realistically. Because a belief can't change unless people know they have a belief in the first place.
That's correct. So it's finding that you've got a belief.
Yeah.
Understanding that everybody has a belief, because we talk about cultural norms.
Yes.
And belief in
Normal isn't great, though. Just because it's normal doesn't mean that it should be.
Yeah, but what's normal? Spike Milligan, he was absolutely brilliant. He spent a lot of time in the sanitarium, and he was an incredible poet. He used to say, do they really cut down 100-meter trees to make me look shorter when they make a chair? Different perspective. Absolutely logical, though. And so, and if we were told, from a young age, or when we can start thinking that we chose this. I kept telling my kids they chose me. I said, well, with that crazy. And I thought, well, yes. And that each time that we have a confrontation, that it's something that we can be grateful for, because we're learning and these are helping us with all the lessons that we came here to learn. And so it's not about retelling the same story over and over again. It's about understanding that we've learned something.
Yeah. And in every situation, there is a lesson. Yeah. And
lessons are not detrimental. We wouldn't be who we are.
Yep.
Unless we had understood our belief system.
Yeah.
Understood that which ones we want to keep and which ones we don't want to keep. And what we're trying to achieve.
Yep. Yeah. And most people don't even necessarily recognize that they want to achieve something. That's such a big piece in itself. Being able to understand that there is a want, a desire, something for themselves underneath all of that responsibility. There is a desire there, and there's no way of uncovering it without first seeing that it's possible.
Yeah.
And that the impossible is possible, because in your head you can't necessarily see it. There's another question that you've just sparked that you put in here as well. But you basically mentioned the first chapter of Bruce Lipton's book as well. In that story before.
I mean, Bruce Lipton is absolutely incredible. He talks about the biology of belief.
And the honeymoon effect. I loved that. Yeah. That one. That was really good. Framing.
Love.
Yeah.
Love conquers all. Love makes, your world change, and being able to be open and being able to see and stop being judging.
And second to the first 7 years, realistically, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like your biggest learning, your brain's on steroids when you're falling in love, and you're capable of learning tons of different languages.
And not only that, nothing is bad. Everything's good. Everything is wonderful. You achieve all sorts of things.
Exactly.
You have so much energy.
Never ending.
Oh, never ending. Sleep. Oh, who needs dreams? No, he said that cells, it's the environment that makes it or breaks it.
Yep.
And the environment comes from the head.
That's right. Yeah. They when they look at the brain and all the things we don't know about it yet, like you saw that they kept, I can't remember the study that it was.
They've got Einstein's brain too.
He was a pianist, I believe, and they kept some of his brain cells, and now they've been able to put it into AI, and AI has been playing his songs from the brain cells itself. So we have so little understanding. I think it's similar to space. Like, we understand space more than we understand the depths of the ocean. Like that is.
But we don't understand us. So
we
don't. Space.
Yeah, well, it's almost mirror image, isn't it? When we start looking out into space, the dark matter, and then internally, what's happening within the atom is that dark matter. Similarly, yeah.
So our beliefs is stuck in that our reality is what we see. It's got nothing to do with reality.
That's so true.
Because your brain to your big toe goes through 5 millivolts, and repeaters saying, move. Oh, yeah, now you move. Good stuff. But it happens so quickly.
Yeah.
That it's magical.
It is. It is.
Have you ever had a belief system that actually runs your life, but it's not yours?
Yeah, I was really analyzing this one when you sent it. I think it's these questions alone are really hard hitting and for self-reflection. So they're really, really good questions. But I know the first stage of it, I suppose, was for me self-sabotage. But where did that self-sabotage come from? And whilst I was able to intellectualize self-sabotage, and I know this big word, and I know this thing that is making me not accomplish my goals, and it wasn't until I was able to go deeper into the feeling why I was self-sabotaging, and it was actually tapping into the original memory for me. So it was enabling myself to kind of go back in time to I would have been 12, maybe a little bit younger than 12. And I had a conversation with a family member. I shall not mention whom. And I was discussing with them that I wanted to go to law school. And the way that I had framed it must have insulted this person, because the way they reacted was, how dare you think you're better than me, sort of thing. And I think from that moment forward, I would self-sabotage in a sense of I needed to live up to this belief system that was placed on me because I trusted that person so much and I cared so deeply about what their thoughts were and how they felt. And at that point in time, my little brain, who didn't know very much about the world and didn't understand what was going on, I really took that so seriously that it, up into my 30s, was impacting me in different ways. Couldn't finish this or that or what have you. But it wasn't until I kind of dug deep into that feeling within the memory. It wasn't just thinking of the memory, but the feeling and where it was stored, and allowed it to come all the way through. So it was definitely not mine, because I had high hopes and high reaches. But I didn't know it had such power over me.
So that's when you started working through it, made the next leap.
Okay. And that's why I'm sitting here with you today, Ashley.
That's amazing. Thank you. So you obviously had to outgrow this belief system in order to be able to continue progressing. That's so interesting. So do you think that the belief system can be changed consciously or unconsciously, and it's got to be reprogrammed? How did you go about making that leap?
I like to always zoom out first. So zooming out, I think my opinion now in this body, in this time period that I'm in now, it's really trying to, first of all, understand that things are outside of our control. So what happens in that time period that kind of impacted you, or a belief system was kind of put on you. Even in society, we have these belief systems put over us. To outgrow them, you first need to see them. You need to know they exist. You need to know that they're there. And I think it was sort of not just acknowledging the fact that it's outside of my control. Other people's programs, their own belief systems, their own projections aren't mine. So de-identifying from that, to use kind of textbook speech. But it was really moving into the feeling, really going somatic, dropping into my body, dropping into what was going on, that made the leaps and bounds, and that unshackled me from it, realistically. Yeah.
So what triggered you? Were you trying to achieve something, or were you wondering why you were stuck, that you started looking? Normally a trigger that says, I want to do this, but what's actually stopping me doing it?
And that's such a brilliant question, because it's so hard to pinpoint, because sometimes I'm just so busy. And I think that was one, like, how many weeks was it before I came here and was able to sit here with you? Like, almost, I think it would have been months because you went overseas and everything.
Absolutely.
Your patience is wonderful.
And I knew there was something there. And so therefore, by me just doing little chips. So
Your patience and your kindness, I think, was so powerful for me too. The fact that I think was week after week I cancelled, and I didn't know why. Like, I was legitimately busy, of course. I mean, I'm wearing
little one.
a zillion different hats, and it's legitimately there. But it's also like I couldn't physically see what was preventing me from being able to do this thing. And it's happened with writing as well. When I've done my articles, like, I have tons. I mean, 50 plus articles that are unfinished, just can't get to the end of them. And there's like a piece that just stops that process. And it's excuses and, all of the things that just, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Or, oh, did you wake up, child? Do you need me? Yes, exactly. And that's a big one too. Like, the kids are playing perfectly fine and they are totally, able and very independent young girls, I must say.
Like my mother.
I just, it's being able to unlock that it's happening, first of all, and then not sitting with judgment, not sitting with shoulds, and being able to just go, it's happened, it's happening, that's okay. And also, I would write about it to myself, to the universe. I would pray about it and say, what is it I don't know? What do I need to find out with this? And that really helped me to see it when I needed to, though, too. Like,
Of course.
it happens at the time that you need it too. Because
Power versus force.
yeah. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you've taken this step and you've changed your belief, do you think your articles will flop?
I have had quite a few more sessions that have flowed more readily, but there's still something that I see is in the way, and I'm not quite sure what it is. And I've been asking that question, praying about that question quite a lot, and sort of trying to see what is it that's kind of preventing me with this particular area. I also get that, like, when you're triggered, sometimes it can be you get really anxious and up in your head. And that word triggered is super overused. But it can also look like feeling tired all of a sudden. And it can also feel like being productive in cleaning. And, oh, I've got this really spontaneous idea and doing this craft activity with the kids. Or it can have the weekends ago. Yeah, see, you know what it is. Yeah, exactly. And when it's like that, it's kind of
Procrastination.
well, I suppose, yeah, procrastination and avoidance. But productive avoidance doesn't feel like avoidance at all.
Very productive procrastination.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think I will wrap the session up. That was amazing. Thank you very much.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Been amazing. Thank you.
Likewise, your company is wonderful.
And